Okay, I move the interpreter over.
All right, thank you. Good evening. And thank you for making time to attend this informational update about our plans for those families who indicated when we moved to phase 2 that they were not yet ready to move. Next slide. I wanted to start by sharing some updates of things that have happened over the past month because things have changed somewhat rapidly. All of our employees returned to their work site. We also were able to launch the COVID-19 dashboard for our district, and I will talk about that in a minute. We also received updated CDC guidance regarding social distancing. We've hosted a vaccine clinic, and we have additional clinics planned. We have returned over 4,500 students in our phased-in hybrid instruction. Also, our county was moved into the orange tier. And so when that happened, our staff began looking at
donde nuestros profesores empezaron a asistir a las clases y manteniendo 6 meses de distancia a la hora de que los estudiantes tienen su almuerzo. El 30 de marzo reabrimos el comité del distrito escolar.
All of our employees wishing to be vaccinated are fully vaccinated. We're continuing to provide monthly surveillance testing for all employees. That means every employee gets tested for COVID-19 once a month. We're also continuing to support our community with COVID testing at our Rosemary Family Learning Center. And it was a great welcome surprise to learn that as of tomorrow, anyone over 16 is eligible for a vaccination. So I also wanted to remind us of the instructional requirements that we were told to focus on all the way back last spring when we began planning for what we would need to do to reopen for in-person instruction. And so Senate Bill 98 was provided with the expectation that we were to have as much in-person instruction as is safely possible. And they also gave flexibility and allowance for distance learning. And the law actually said that distance learning may be offered when students are medically fragile or they would be at risk by having in-person instruction, or if they're
Cuando los muchachos tienen algún problema médico en que los hace muy frágiles y puede ponerlos en riesgo, o se necesita que mantengan la cuarentena.
So we attempted to adapt to the differing needs of our community. And the way we did that was we established an all-year distance learning option. And then we also had the phased-in hybrid option. And so the all-year distance learning option was set up to address the provisions for distance learning, which were those with medical needs or significant safety concerns. We did the distance learning and phase-in options before the school year started, so we could assign students to staff and establish the classes at the very beginning of the year so that students and families would have the same teacher for the remainder of the year. Because we believe that the relationship between the teacher and the student and the teacher and the family is very important. We also worked with our district-wide reopening committee to make sure that we were compliant with all of the local and state public health department requirements for safety whenever we were planning to move from one phase to the next. And we also noted that as conditions have improved significantly, then it's time to move to the next level in our plan. So this is the COVID-19 website that I was mentioning earlier, and this is district local data. And what you can see from this is it's a very positive trend. So we've actually been operating programs since last April of 2020, but this data is as of January 1 of 21. And so since then, there have been 15 positive cases, and you're able to look at the bottom number line and see if it was a staff case or a student case. We don't give a lot of specifics because of the medical provision for not divulging medical information of the privacy rights. What we noticed is even though we increased our testing because we started testing all of our employees in December, we still have maintained a very low positivity rate. And then we also know that countywide, the adjusted case rates continue to drop. We're expected to go into the yellow tier. Originally, it was thought that it might be as early as mid-April. Now it's looking like it might be in the latter part of April. And so again, we're doing surveillance testing. And with all of this testing, with bringing students back on campus, having programs open, we have not had any cases to date spread internally. They've all been contracted from an external community source. So we have a lot of things in place to ensure the safety of our students and our staff. And this has been called the Swiss cheese approach, that no single measure necessarily is infallible, but the measures together create the situation that we're seeing where we haven't had any spread internally. So we have the hospital grade filters. We have the maximum ventilation in our classrooms. We have hand sanitation available throughout the campus and in classrooms. Everyone wears facial covering, students and staff. We require the social distancing. We assign seating, and we also seat classes together if they're eating. If you want more specific information about our COVID safety protocols, I encourage you to go to our website, and our COVID-19 button is on the very front of the page, or you can also visit the California Department of Public Health website. So one of the recent updates is the Public Health Department no longer requires 6 feet between students. They now ask that 3 feet between student chairs, and they indicate that it is strongly recommended. So that's what we're working with, is 3 feet between student chairs. Students need to have 6 feet between them when their facial covering is removed. So that would be for eating or drinking. And so that's why when we're looking at the lunch provisions, we're making sure that we have 6 feet distancing between students. Also, another point that I wanted to bring up was you've heard a lot about cohort size or cohort stability. And the update from the Public Health Department is that that is only required when the county is in the purple tier. And so that provision is whether it's the school day, our after school program, or preschool. So considerations for the next phase, and this is something that we worked with our reopening committee on. The A-B hybrid schedule is challenging for families, it's challenging for staff, it's challenging for students. We also know from talking to other school leaders in other states that have already returned for in-person instruction that every transition is a stress point for the organization. So as a result, we were looking to have only one more transition for this school year. Also, on March 5th, an additional Assembly Bill 86, was passed, also providing additional funding with the expectation that we would maximize instructional time and accelerate learning. Also, our consideration was to develop a plan for students not ready to return for in-person learning. So now what I want to do is describe the different options available for our families. This first option is to allow elementary students to return to their classes as early as April 19th if their family is already ready to do that transition. And I have been contacted by a number of families asking about this. So this is for elementary students only because we have more back-end processes that we need to put in place at middle school. But for elementary school, the students can return the next Monday according to their scheduled A or B hybrid instruction day. And then they will transition on May 3rd, where they will come 5 days a week. I want to draw your attention, if this is your desire that your child return as early as next Monday or next Thursday, if they're a B hybrid, you need to return your form by 3 o'clock on Friday, April 16th. And we're asking that you notify the school office that your student will be returning. So again, if they're cohort A, they return on April 19th. Cohort B, they return on April 22nd. The next option is in-person learning starting on May 3rd. Some of our families who indicated that they weren't ready to move to our phase 2 hybrid indicated that the schedule of the 2 days a week was a challenge for them. So we recognize that for some of our families, the 5-day-a-week schedule eliminates that challenge for them. So if this is the option that you want for your child, then the students will return to their assigned school and classroom on May 3rd. They will have the same teacher that they've had so far this year, or at the middle school, the same teachers. Schools will be providing the specific start and dismissal times. And this form is due by 8 a.m. on Monday, the 19th. So the schedules are for elementary students. They have a full day, so pretty much the same type of schedule that they had before we had school closures. So something around at 8 to 2:30-ish. And they go full days on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, and have lunch at school. On Wednesday, the students are dismissed at lunchtime, and they have a grab and go lunch to take home or to go to after school care. For the middle school schedule, lunch is more of a challenge due to the number of students on campus. The leadership teams are finalizing the exact middle school schedule. It will be 5 days a week. It will likely be, 3 block periods, and then they will go home and they may have some synchronous instruction time or asynchronous instruction time when they get home, but that's being finalized with their leadership teams because it requires an adjustment to an agreement that they made in their collective bargaining agreement before we can finalize it. So once that's finalized, families will be informed of the final schedule. What I wanted to share with you all tonight is the interdependence of this planning. And so I appreciate that for families, you want all of the information to know how to make the decision. And for us, as we're planning, we need to understand the number of families to plan for. And so there is this little bit of tension because the plan depends on how many people choose the short-term distance learning option. And so depending on the number of students in the short-term distance learning option, that will determine how much synchronous instruction time we're able to offer based on the number of staff we can hire. So this is the option 3, the short-term distance learning option. So in this option, if this is what families select, they'll remain at home for the remainder of the school year. The student will be assigned to a credentialed learning facilitator who will provide all of the remote instruction according to a schedule developed by the district. The instruction will primarily be asynchronous, but it will be compliant with SB 98. And the teacher of record that your child has had prior to May 3rd will provide information to the learning facilitator for consistency and for any services that are necessary. The teacher of record, or the teacher that your child has had so far this year, will complete a report card for your student's work through April 30th. And the learning facilitator will provide a progress report at the end of the school year. I want to draw your attention to the fact that the form is due by 8 a.m. on Monday, April 19th, because there is significant back-end work that we need to do in our student information system to make all of these adjustments and changes. And I do want to let you know that because our system is designed for in-person instruction, our default is that the student will return for in-person instruction. So some of the systemic challenges we have of offering this additional distance learning plan was we know that teachers providing for a more traditional school schedule don't have the ability then to also meet the needs of students who stay at home. And so that's why the students in the short-term distance learning will be assigned to a credentialed learning facilitator. And as I said earlier, we do know that some of the students who indicated that they were not ready said that it was due to the schedule, or in some instances, I received emails indicating that now that family members had been able to get vaccinated, the family felt more comfortable with the children returning. One of the things that we know is we have 44 openings in our all-year distance learning, but those openings are dependent on specific grade levels. And so we have staffing ratios, and so we have to stay within the staffing ratios of the specific grade levels. And so we will prioritize students who have extenuating circumstances such as medical needs in order to fill those openings as well. It's very important that we get the information back as soon as possible. If you already know which one of these options that you will select, we would ask that you complete the form as early as possible, but we need all information back by Monday morning, April 19th at 8 a.m. We need that time to determine our staffing needs, to provide training for those staff, and to communicate all of the information to the short-term distance learning families. So what are we doing, or how are we getting staffing for the short-term distance learning, and how are we providing the instruction? So we're working with our teachers on special assignment to provide weekly grade level standards aligned learning. We're also working with our local universities, San Jose State, Santa Clara, another teacher college, Brandman University, and other universities in an attempt to hire teachers to provide the facilitated learning. We're also reaching out to teachers that we have who have been on a leave of absence to see if, because this is all remote instruction, if they are able to support this work. So we've posted these openings on an education site called EdJoin, as well as university job boards. I do want to be very transparent with this, that there is a staffing shortage in our area. And so we are working and we're hitting all of our networks. And thankfully, we do have long-standing partnerships with many of these universities, and we've done a lot of student placements, student teacher placements at these universities. So we do have rapport with them, and they are sending out the information to their teacher staff as well. So this is what the sample schedule looks like. And again, I say sample schedule because the learning facilitator will put out the exact schedule that will look very similar to this, to the specific grade levels. And so you can see this, the proposed schedule here. Again, our goal would be to provide 60 minutes of synchronous time, but that really is dependent on the amount of staffing that we're able to hire and the number of students that we have in this short-term distance learning. The majority of the work, as you can see here, will be asynchronous work. And this is the proposed schedule for TK and kindergarten. This is the proposed sample schedule for grades 1 through 8. And the difference is there's more minutes required for instruction in grades 1 through 8 than in TK and kindergarten. Again, the goal would be to provide an hour of synchronous time, but it will be dependent on the number of staff we're able to hire. It will be compliant with SB 98. Next slide. So again, the final phase is, as we know, our system is moving from phase 2 to all students come back to campus on May 3rd. And then we talked about the options being offered to the families who indicated that they were not ready to return for in-person instruction. The timeline is tight, and yet there's a lot of back-end work that needs to be done to get all of this in place to make it happen. So tonight we're having the informational meeting, and then you will be provided the choice form for you to select your choice out of the 3 options made available. We will be sending multiple reminders to parents to return the form by the April 19th deadline. And we need the deadline of 8 a.m. on the 19th to allow for all of the planning and the transition that has to happen. Again, we've outlaid the schedules here. So elementary students have the 3 options. One is to return as soon as next week. The other is to stay in or to transition to the short-term distance learning. And the other one is to return full days on May 3rd. Middle school has just the two options because we need more time to transition the students to middle school. I do want to be very transparent that the short-term distance learning will be asynchronous for the most part with a learning facilitator. So the follow-up that we're going to provide is the presentation slides and the link to the online choice form will be emailed this evening to all families of students not ready. A recorded presentation and a reminder will be emailed on Thursday. And then again, just want to remind any of the families of elementary students who want to return next week that that form needs to be completed by 3 p.m. on Friday, April 16th. And we ask that you also contact the school office. We will be sending daily reminders to submit the form by the deadline of April 19th at 8 a.m. Thank you. And if you have friends that you know were not able to be here tonight and hear this live, please assure them that we will be sending information out to all of our families who indicated that they are not ready. Have a good night.